a team, a front office that has caught as much flack as anybody over the last 2 years.
Deservedly so.
I mean, yeah, they brought it upon
about how they handled Saquon, about how they've handled the roster, about re-signing Daniel Jones, about doing a documentary where they explained their reasoning on Hard Knocks for why they were doing it. And I sat in this chair 2 summers ago and said that was the best behind-the-scenes football show I had ever seen. Because at minimum, you were telling people, this is why we're doing these things. Right. We don't know if we're right or wrong. We're using our best educated response mechanisms here. We are trying to plan. Here's how the cap works. Here's how money works. Yep. This is why we were doing those things.
Yep.
They had the absolute worst case scenario play out last year, which is not only did the player who they controversially let walk, they didn't trade him, contrary to what you might have heard a couple of times on the broadcast last night. He left in free agency. Mm-hmm. It was the worst case scenario for that guy to go and not just play well, not just stay healthy, which has been a challenge for Saquon, but run for 2,000 yards and win a Super Bowl. That is the worst case scenario here. But the reasoning didn't change. Look at what happened last night. And I understand this is a Thursday night game. Those can be weird. It is week 6 of the season. There's still a 2-win team that's got a ton that they have to accomplish here to be even relevant when we get to December. But it felt like a moment for them last night. And everything and everyone that contributed last night, it all comes back to the decisions that they made over the last 2 years for what they were going to do with the roster moving forward. Yes, in 2022, coming off of a playoff season where they went and won a playoff game on the road in Minnesota, they wanted to retain their core. They tried to re-sign Saquon to a deal that was pretty close to what he ended up taking a year later from the Eagles. They couldn't get it done. So they tag him. They re-sign Daniel Jones. And you spend 2 years in this kind of purgatory at the quarterback position. Fast forward a year, a couple more attempts to get Saquon done. They decide to let him walk. It doesn't matter who your running back is if you don't have the quarterback. They used some of that money and, of course, draft picks to go and trade for Brian Burns, who was everywhere on the field and will be here again before the end of this show. He's going to join us live. He's tied for the league lead with 7 sacks. Yeah. He is an absolute monster and a menace on the field, as you saw last night. Mm-hmm. That is a decision that if you went back in time, they would do 100 times out of 100. Pay the elite pass rusher, not pay the 6-year veteran running back. Again, I'm taking nothing away from Saquon. The Eagles won a Super Bowl with him. Saquon Barkley was not going to be the difference between the Giants winning the Super Bowl last year and not.
That's true.
Flat out. It was not going to be the difference. So what do you do at running back now? You draft Tyrone Tracy at over 1,000 yards from scrimmage as a rookie, and then you draft Cam Skattebo, who might be the most fun story in the NFL right now. I went back this morning and just watched the sequence about 6-7 minutes left in the game. They're around midfield, and they're just calling inside run after inside run to Cam Skattebo and going, try to stop us. It's like their equivalent of the tush push. He is running into traffic, and you see the entire pile move down the field. Mm-hmm. And the fans, Eddie from the Bronx, who was probably screaming on the first drive of the game, there's Saquon just running through people. He's on Cam Skattebo's side. Cam Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy. Throw Devin Singletary in, too. They're making a fraction of what Saquon Barkley is. They've had wide receiver health issues throughout this season. Malik Neighbors out for the season with a torn ACL. They didn't have Darius Slayton last night. They're throwing to Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Who's not little, by the way. He's
on 6'4". The practice squad. He's big Jordan.
Big guy.
But it's jump ball situations, and he's going up and making plays. And you get Jaxson Dart. You get Abdul Carter at the top. You didn't panic and take a quarterback higher than you thought you should take him. But you trade back into the first round, and you take Jaxson Dart, who, again, I understand this is one game last night. But if you want to have hope about the Giants moving forward, it's that maybe, and they certainly think this, they think they've got the quarterback. They think they've got the guy. You see Jaxson Dart, he might have a little fine coming his way for the other part of the Michael Jackson dance that he did last night. You can't. You can't actually do that. That's probably going to be $5-10 grand. Exactly. You can't go to that part. And that'll be Jackson's first experience with the NFL fine system. Doesn't it seem like Jaxson Dart and Cam Skattebo both have a little something wrong with them?
Yeah, but in the best way possible.
In a great, great way. They both seem to have a screw
Look
loose.
at that photo right now.
These are... Cam Skattebo is going on the TNF set post-game and ripping his shirt off Hulk Hogan style.
Like full-on
chest
Hogan
bumpy
with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
With the whole rug of Ryan Fitzpatrick's chest.
So much.
Which, when you're sweaty, when you're a little wet and sticky, that's a bold move because you might be taking some of Ryan Fitzpatrick with you after that. But both of them just seem to be... I hate to, do the generational taglines, but they both got this certain Gen Z to them. Certainly Jaxson Dart does. Cam Skattebo just might be nuts.
Yeah, for sure.
He is a different guy. I've interviewed him before on the Insiders over on NFL Network. He's a different type
dude,
of a guy. He can be just very soft-spoken and straightforward, and then he can go into the absolute, wild man type of mode. Think of these last 2 draft classes for the Giants. Again, these are all things that have taken place since they ultimately let Saquon Barkley walk. Again, I will remind people, after several attempts over the previous 2 years to extend Saquon Barkley. They drafted Malik Neighbors, Tyler Newman, who's starting for him, Drew Phillips, who's been an impact player in the defensive backfield. Theo Johnson was everywhere last night.
Yep.
A breaks-through type of performance for him. And Tyrone Tracy. This year's draft class starts with Abdul Carter, Jaxson Dart, Cam Skattebo. That's your core that you're trying to build around now. And if you're retaining Saquon Barkley, a great player who we've seen be one of the best players in the NFL, there are moves you cannot make. You do not have Brian Burns. You're not adding him to a mix that now includes him and Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter. You don't have that guy who's co-leading the NFL in sacks. If you're retaining Saquon Barkley, it's a salary cap leak. You don't have that flexibility. And then at the quarterback position, yes, you kind of had to try to patch this thing together and build it around Daniel Jones because coming off of a playoff year, you don't really want to blow it up at that point and go back to ground zero. But you were tied to somebody who, as well as he's playing right now in Indianapolis, and he certainly is, you probably felt like there's a ceiling for this guy. So what did they do? They didn't go, well, we're all going to get fired if Saquon goes to Philly because they knew he was going to Philly. We're all going to get fired if he plays well and they go and make a playoff run and Saquon's a big part of it. You try to do the right thing. And Joe Shane, Brian Dable, the Mara family, and certainly John, who's fighting cancer right now, had to be wherever he is smiling at that game last night because there have not been a lot of those types of moments for the Giants over the last 3 years. Yeah. Every fan, every media member wanted everybody fired. This is why you do the right thing even when it's hard. If you get fired for doing the right thing, you accept the consequences. Doing things because public pressure and let's just give Saquon $16, $17 million and let's retain him and know we're probably not going to be very good. Or do we free up those resources, draft a couple of dudes who are both studs? Tyrone Tracy's a really good player too, and try to build this thing in the big picture. I don't know where the rest of the season goes for the Giants, but for at least one night, when you rewind and go back to Hard Knocks 18 months ago, this is the math problem they were trying to solve. It's a complicated math problem. It's advanced algebra at the least. But it seems like you at least can understand why when they graphed this out on the board, they came to the conclusions they did. On the flip side of it, you have an Eagles team that when they walked off the field in New Orleans, and it's always hard to project out what teams are going to be. There's turnover. Guys age at various points. There's going to be players who suffer injuries. The Eagles have not necessarily had those circumstances. They haven't had a devastating injury to one of their core players. It's a lot of the same dudes. I don't think anybody is aging out. You had, the likes of, the Brandon Grahams and Fletcher Coxes and Jason Kelsey's who over years have been there. Right. Obviously, some of those guys were not on the team last year, but you're not having those guys. Like Saquon is not at an age where he's falling off. You saw Saquon. He still looks like Saquon last night. A.J. Brown, who was banged up in camp, but they got him the football last night. The passing game seemed to be off just in general. There's obviously a pick six in that game. I go back to the miss to Devontae Smith. It's a coverage bust on a night that Shane Bowen's defense was really, really impressive. They completely turn loose Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts misses him by a lot. I'm not a quarterback expert, But that is a situation where put some air under the ball and let one of the fastest dudes in the NFL just go and get it. Then post-game, because everything for 3 days, it's a short week, there had been a lot of discussion, including on the pregame show, about the meeting early in the week. It was reported. Jalen Hurts talked about it. Saquon Barkley talked about it. A.J. Brown was asked about the meeting, and he said this.
You had this meeting this past week with Saquon and Jalen. What was behind that?
I don't recall the meeting.
Oh, okay. The meeting never happened.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Those guys said it did happen.
Oh, you didn't talk to them.
You weren't in the meeting?
I don't recall.
Or you don't want to?
I don't recall.
He's got a smile on his face, okay? I like A.J. Brown a lot. I've always enjoyed talking with him. I think he's one of the great tone setters in the league. But that was unusual, was it not?
Yeah.
Pretty
weird.
I mean, if he doesn't recall it, maybe it's time for another meeting. A meeting about the meeting, because the parts still didn't connect the way that the Eagles want. I don't personally lay this at the feet. I think it's way overly simplistic to lay this at the feet of Kevin Patullo, the new offensive coordinator. Every year, there's some level of this with the Eagles where early in the season, they're trying to figure some things out. Jalen Hurts has had a different play caller every year going back to high school. He has never had any consistency through Alabama to Oklahoma to obviously the Eagles, whether it was Nick Sirianni calling it in his first year, turning it over to Steichen, then Steichen leaves, hand it to Brian Johnson. That doesn't work out. You go and name a new play caller once again, then he goes ahead and gets a job. In Kellen Moore, there's all kinds of circumstances here, but it just doesn't look right. And the Eagles in general don't quite look right.
Yep.
Some of the biggest plays in that game, just in the fourth quarter, you mishandle a kickoff out of bounds. You have a critical fumble. And again, the pick six and the miss. Like the only thing that goes right in the big picture in that game is, yes, the tush push is still really good. So good last night, in fact, running it 4 consecutive times, that it does, sitting there watching it, just makes me think they don't have confidence in anything else they're doing. You're paying A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as 2 of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. You got the highest paid running back in the NFL.
A red zone touch, a red zone opportunity. Like, what is happening?
And you've got Jalen Hurts, of course, who was the Super Bowl MVP. And not just because he can duck his head in behind the guards who may or may not leave a split second early. I do find the comedy in after the 3rd and 2 tush push. And then they cut to Kevin Patullo on the sideline, who's going like this. He's got the play card. What could he be calling? It's 4th and inches. We got to cover that play. We know it's the tush push. It's unstoppable. But there's not a lot else that it seems like the Eagles have a high degree of confidence in. Yeah. Nick Sirianni said it after the game last night that you got to treat this like a mini bye. We'll hear from Lane Johnson a little bit later on in the show because he's talking about we're becoming too predictable offensively. Well, the part that's predictable is the unstoppable part. The unpredictable parts are where you're not executing things the way that you need to. It was a weird night once again for the Eagles, who for a 4-2 team that is still on top of the division is going to face all kinds of questions for the next 10 days. And it was a great night for the New York Giants. We'll see how the rest of this season goes. But if you want hope, those 2 wild man rookies are a big part of the puzzle. And you hope that's kind of the new definition of what Giants football is as you move into the future.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.